It would have helped to screen the trailer because that explains a lot. And
yes.
To say it all. But yeah, just many things. Still in the making, I suppose.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm here.
Exactly. So yeah, I guess the first obvious question is like, how did you kind of come across blockchain? How are you here? Like we were just talking about, like in the panel.
I was invited by M.I.A, who I'd like to thank for inviting me.
Gupta.
Yes. And just as an artist, I've just released this documentary, which was made by a friend, and it's a bit of an interesting situation because we won the Sundance in January. We won Sundance, but it just hit the cinemas now in October. It's taken quite long for that process, and so that got me into thinking about new platforms to distribute on, because we felt that going through normal avenues like Netflix or putting it on iTunes is good, but maybe wasn't enough because it brought so many different worlds and ideas together in one film. And so that's when I first started thinking about building some other way where you can, put out political films without having to suit the agenda of the distributors, because I felt that's what is so obvious these days, that once you try to have political work released, you often have to side with the elite. With the establishment, and otherwise you get buried. And so, it's not really about, my presence here is not really about how artists become more, empowered in the monetary situation of the industry, and how music is distributed and how they get that money from it not having a middleman. But really it's about a necessity, building a space where creativity can be what it is without having to fit a framework of the agenda.
Okay, cool. So, because Imogen Heap, she's a musician who's talked a bit about the blockchain, and she accepted Ethereum famously for like one of her songs. And I think for her, blockchain in the music industry is about, rights, and about like obviously every song has a huge number of people who kind of need to get paid. And I think her idea was that there were too many middlemen, and that somehow by using a blockchain you could like decentralize that and get money to the artist. But are you saying that it's less about money?
No, I think those things are important, and it's a bonus when that happens. Like obviously I think M.I.A invited me here to focus on that, to say, wouldn't it be great when artists get all the money? And and I think that is great, but it's you're going to have more musicians and artists fight for that, and that's like the obvious one and the first point you stop at. But for me, I feel like what's important, just in terms of where we're at in the world and how things have gone, it's really about having the freedom and the space to be creative and express yourself without without sort of, we were talking about this, without sort of having to conform and fit into the mainstream. And I feel like the music industry is affected in lots of ways, like, less, which is why I think the documentary is important to show. We have less kids coming from the streets now that become musicians or enter into universities and get opportunities, and then you know, enter the established industry. It's very difficult, you know.
So is blockchain like a kind of, is the new technology that's coming through, is it like an opportunity to make that, more possible?
Yes, I mean, that's the conversation we're having, is it going to do that? Because if it's not going to do that, and if it's going to mimic the industry that's already established, which is now so tied up that it's very difficult for people who are outside of that, or for people who have political opinions, to break through, you know. And I feel like, you know, you saw like during the elections in America with Trump and Hillary, like 99% of the music industry supported Hillary, and they had to, and they, you know, that was like openly done, and I, you know, it's maybe the same in Britain or whatever, but what I'm saying is that the connection between politicians or politics and music is so close now, or the music industry, that in terms of a global space, somebody from India, can they become a pop star in America, you know? And I had this conversation 2 years ago in the Evening Standard and got blackballed and completely cancelled, is the term, on the internet, because I said that, you know, when I pointed out, actually, if American artists are going to be the elite artists who have 1 billion followers, then they have the right to talk about or represent issues that are going on around the world. And, you know, American artists felt that that was not true, and that it's not their problem to discuss that.
So do you feel like there's kind of there's not really a space for like?
Yeah, I mean, I think to me that was the end of the industry, because it was like, okay, so you have elitism in the music industry where only 5 artists are big, you know, that they become billionaires. And then, but they don't want to speak about stuff that's going on in other parts of the world. And then America, who is the #1 distribution space, whether it's Apple or Tidal or whatever the thing is, it's the #1 distribution center, you know, the hub. And if they feel that, you know, somebody in Syria has to come to talk about Syria, and so this Syrian girl has to become a pop star in America in order to talk about Syrian problems, because they've invented those social structures and lanes and terms that we have, the rest of the world kind of on social media abides by. If they're creating those rules, and they also own the platform, and then they also tell you what you should talk about and not talk about, then I think that's dangerous, because it leaves out 95% of the world.
So we've had a massive like centralization of power, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird that I'm saying it, you're right, because I did get let in and I became a pop star in America, but the whole documentary is about how you are trying to talk about something that happened in your country, and it was impossible. And yeah, so I think, you know, if blockchain is going to do something to the music industry, then that would have to feature into it, you know, like a diplomatic space and equality for different artists to you know, come up depending on, like, not dependent on who owns the platform and who's owning the distribution.
So like blockchain is often talked about like the internet of value, and often compared a lot to the internet as well. People are like constantly saying, you know, people who, like me, are a bit skeptical about blockchain. People say to me, well, look at the internet in the early 90s. And anyways, there's this just analogy drawn a lot between like blockchain and the internet, and obviously blockchain runs on the internet. Do you think that the internet has overall been a positive thing? Like, because obviously you came out in like the early noughties when like some of these like social media platforms weren't even there, or like they were just starting, and then you kind of you know, had to like, I guess, adjust to that in some ways, and like put yourself on MySpace, etc. And that was really like, in some ways, that gave a possibility to people from Syria or from Sri Lanka or from anywhere in the world you know, in theory, to like put themselves out there, but do you think ultimately it's led to just actually more power concentration and like actually that's...
Well, the internet has changed, and you know, I don't know if I should say this, but if Julian Assange was here, a lot of problems in this room would be solved because he's one of the smartest men, you know, alive on this topic. But yeah, the internet changed hands, but during 2010, that is the battle I had. That, you know, in 2005, when I first put the record out, all the shops came to the record label and said, we don't know where to stop this girl because her genre is so mashed up, you know, she doesn't belong in the shops, because where do you put it? Do you put it in the world music section or electronic section or hip hop section? She doesn't fit the mold. And so they said, we're just not going to sell the record. And so during that year, Napster happened and LimeWire. So 1 million people downloaded the album. So, you know, I had become the first, you know, internet pop star, because, you know, that year I went to, even though I think I sold about 25 records in England, when I went to Coachella, I had to do 3 encores, you know, because I was like huge. And that happened because of the internet, so obviously I fell in love with it. And, you know, I was one of the first people to push the crazy MySpace world and whatever, and, you know, sort of embraced whatever the thing was in the beginning, YouTube, whatever. So when it came to 210 and net neutrality and what was happening, and obviously there was the end of the Sri Lankan war, and I'm a Sri Lankan Tamil, and a lot of that played out on the internet, and seeing how it was no longer a democratic space, and also a liberal space, then I started to think twice about it. And, you know, and I just feel like since then it's only gotten worse. And I get it, you know, whenever creatives and people with good intentions invent something, it often, you know, gets taken over. And this is the point you're making, like, wouldn't blockchain become the monster?
Like the internet, you know, just kind of starts with this idea, and we've seen it already, you know, like things like this decentralization idea, and then kind of people creating all these other structures.
I think that's good and bad in everything, you know, it's sort of like a 50-50 thing, because ultimately you're talking about machines and you can switch it off, you know, and with music, you can always go back to strumming a guitar and, you know, doing live shows and get back into the streets. And that industry, it can evolve, you know, or go back to basics. And people will always find ways to access it. But I think, the idea is to, what we were saying is to incentivize the artists, because we you know, I believe the creativity standard is there's something interesting happening with it, and that's because of the nature of the internet and how things are sold or listened to, and it's dictating creativity, whereas before creativity dictated the tool, but now the tool dictates creativity. And pretty soon, if you have the tool being that great, they could just wash out Mozart and, you know, give you perfection, then what's the point of having artists, you know? And so that's like the conversation that we were having in terms of, like, what is the future of an artist? And I think this is where blockchain comes in. Because as machines strive for perfection, and to sing more like humans, and, you know, all the algorithms are putting in all their favorite songs and washing out another favorite song that sounds like they're all their favorite songs, which is kind of happening now. You would need more and more people, like old school artists that are in it for the right reasons, and that are, you know, that have individual and unique perspectives about the world and the times we live in, which is very human.
Yeah.
And I think that's why blockchain could be useful. Is if those people can stay in their environment and still get paid and access their fans, and without having to go through the sausage machine of the industry, so they come out exactly like all the rest of the perfect pop stars,
Yeah.
So like, for me, that would have been useful.
So it sounds like you've got like a kind of mixed feeling about technology, because you've always kind of embraced it, but then you've also worked a lot with analog, and so and you're kind of saying that so like an AI machine can probably eventually, we're already seeing massive use of people changing the way their voices sound, and people use there's so much, it's kind of so easy to make music. Anyone who has GarageBand on their phone can make a decent sounding track, because there's so much technology to make music sound kind of decent. And so we have this kind of perfection, but actually, as you say, that's not artistry. And I guess maybe now, I think there is potentially a backlash against that kind of perfection. And as you say, people can always pick up a guitar, and I think we're seeing now vinyl sales go up. We're seeing a new apparently cassette tapes are coming back, someone told me recently, because people are into that sound or whatever. So in some ways, so blockchain is an interesting one, because someone was talking earlier about blockchain as part of the fourth industrial revolution, and AI being part of that as well, so those being hand in hand. But you're kind of talking about it in a bit of a different way, so AI being a little bit of something that you maybe, not that you're necessarily against, but in this context, that kind of idea of making something more perfect than a human can. But
we do live in a time where everybody on Instagram wants to look like a CGI kind of, thing, and yeah, you're right, you could generate a song, and in 2 seconds and be a DJ that gets paid tons of money to get. You don't even have to, you could just literally, you don't even have to have music when you tour now, and it just feels like, I think, maybe that then becomes that there's some sort of happy medium where I think, I still use cassette tapes when I record songs. So, there's got to be, I think when it gets super technical and technological, then there will be a pull towards something more organic and analog and human.
Yeah. Okay, I think they might be telling us that they've got the clip of M.I.A.'s new documentary. Is that correct? That's what you're saying? Yeah, you're going to watch it. Don't know where it's going to be. Sorry.
I think they were kicking us off.
Sorry, they were just trying to get us to sit here.
You want to hear my story? I'm going to show you my story. What's that song about? Stereotypes attached to immigrants and stuff like that is that they come and take the jobs and take the money.
At least 100 have arrived in South London.
I had to deal with the fact that I was different and I was an immigrant.
The government say there are too many of them.
In Sri Lanka, we were surrounded by civil war. My dad was the founder of the Tamil resistance.
Life is so strong.
What he's put us through. Music was my medicine. It just blew up so quickly. I lived through a war, came as a refugee, that is now a pop star. What are the goals?
What do I do?
From the airport.
Bloody world is looking at this, I don't understand.
That's you, that's my little brother. 2 out of 6 boys are dead. There's a genocide going on. We don't want to talk about death, talk about Beverly Hills.
We get frantic emails from people who say that M.I.A. is a terrorist.
The worst thing they could do to you is to make you irrelevant. What experience are we allowed to share from these cases? You've got access to a microphone. Please use it to say something. We've used as a scapegoat to build a wall, but people have always mixed and moved, and interesting things happen because of it.
Cool, thanks for having me. Everyone should go and see that documentary. I'm going to go see the film.